Our next speaker is a 17-year veteran of his current company and is credited with one of the best acquisitions in all of e-commerce, a relatively unknown Dutch company by the name of Bookings. Please welcome the CEO and president of the Priceline Group, Glenn Fogel. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you. So, 2005, did you have any inkling at that time that it could be as big? I think it was, 133 million, that deal at the time. And I think a lot of us here in the US hadn't even heard of the company, I'm embarrassed to say.
Yeah, so a lot of people ask this question, and nobody talks about the first acquisition, which was Active Hotels, which we had done the year earlier in the UK, which had the exact same model. And it's really a disservice to those people because neither company by themselves, I think, ever could have achieved what together they did. So we got Active first, and we paid $165 million for that one. And then we bought Booking, and that was, we bought it, but I hate to use the word bought. We convinced them to come in, and we're partners. And the people at Active were partners. And everybody wanted to do it together. And that's really what made the success. Now, did I ever think it would become what it is today? Not in my wildest dreams would I have ever thought of that. But it's nice to know that you can have the hope that you can achieve something really fantastic. And I'm not talking about the amount of wealth it created. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about they've created something that has made travel easier. That's why people use Booking.com. They do it because, yeah, they're going to get a great price, but a lot of times the price is the same. The breadth is fantastic. Yeah, they get the greatest choice. But that ease of use, that's what we're here for, to make travel easier. That's what we're trying to accomplish.
So when you think about that acquisition, that process, what did you take away from that applies to other acquisitions, even deals that you've said no to?
So we've been extremely fortunate in a lot of the deals we've done. You know, people talk about the Booking.com acquisition. A lot less people talk about, let's say, Agoda. So we were able to buy or partner the people at Agoda. I first met those guys in Bangkok before we bought Active or Booking. And we didn't close the deal. We didn't get the deal done until 2007. But I think it was maybe around $15 million. And that is one of the premier ways you can get accommodations in Asia. And it's fantastic. So that was a good one. And certainly we've had luck with Travel Jigsaw, which is now rentalcars.com, which I won't go through all the numbers, but again, very low purchase price, worth a lot of money, done a lot of good work. And of course, we've been successful. You just saw Steve was just here for Kayak, Steve Hafner, and that's worked out fantastically. So what is the theme that has run through all these that it's worked out so well? I think there are always a lot, but I'd say one thing is, and that is not trying to tell people what to do and relying on the management team that you spent all that money to bring in, that they know what they're doing, which is why you spent that money, so they would come in and do work. There's nothing more foolish than going out, spending all that money, bringing in a company, and tell them, oh, okay, don't do it the way you're doing it that's made you successful today, do it the way I say. And why did we do the stuff in Europe? We had tried years earlier to expand Priceline into Europe, and it was an abysmal failure. So we kind of knew, hey, we don't know how to do this. We got to find people there who know how to do it, and then let them run with the ball and create the success. I can say many things, but that's the one I'll leave everybody with.
So this week has been a pretty interesting one for the online travel world.
Hadn't noticed.
You hadn't noticed?
Yeah.
No one else has noticed, right? You don't know what I'm talking about. So what is the market reacting to? And you're from the street, I think, earlier in your career. What are they thinking? What's going on? Is this a structural shift, or is this something, just another day at the office?
You know, it's interesting because I was asked that exact same question by an investor, structural change. And I'll give pretty much the same answer that I gave that person, which is there is no structural shift. And the way anybody should look at our industry is that we have so much ramp left. It's so exciting, the things that we can still accomplish. One way to do it, let's take Phocuswright research, for example. How many regions, Doug, have online penetration of all products above 50%?
All products, all sectors?
Products, yeah.
Zero.
Zero.
Zero regions?
Zero.
Yes.
Gee, that seems like an awful lot of opportunity for everybody in our space. Just start right there, and we can stop right there. So I believe that, yes, we are much further along than we were when I first joined this industry in February 2000, but there's still so much left for us to accomplish.
Which sectors do you see the most headroom? I mean, I think the big concern is hotels, right? And there's some concern perhaps in certain markets. Penetration might be...
Yeah, so we are, as you know, we concentrate our business, the majority of our businesses earn in the hotel space. So let's concentrate on that for an example, for right now. I know that there's still tremendous opportunity to get people to come on who are not currently getting their accommodations through an online or digital service. That's one. Two, I believe there's so many things we can do that will make that process better than it is now. Yes, it's infinitely better than it was, but I know there's still a lot of problems. And so I mentioned Agoda, and Agoda is run by a guy named Rob Rosenstein, CEO there, and he's been there essentially since it started, pretty much is the way to think of it. And Rob sent me an email the other day, and he said, it's something like 2 a.m. in Dubai. I'm here with the family, with my little kid, and everybody's melting down because we're on a half-hour wait to check into the hotel. Hey, what's with that? Why would you have to, why are you on a long, what are they doing behind the front desk that's taking so long, that it takes so much effort to get a room? The hotel has every single piece of information they need. It should be as easy as I go out and get my ride in either Uber or Lyft or one of those. I just press my phone and it appears, I get in, it takes me, I get there, I get out, I'm done, it's fine. It's frictionless. That's what we need travel to become, is take the friction out.
So how does that fit into your strategy? Because my impression of kind of booking and the brands from the outside, it's laser focused, accommodation. I mean, people have been talking about, when is booking going to get into flights and other sectors, but you've had this laser focus on this sector, and I mean, the results are clear, right, in the performance of the company. So are you doing something new? Does this signal a bit of a shift in strategy?
It's not a shift in our strategy, but and this is the way I think most companies of size think about things. So you're doing your day-to-day, your strategy that earns the money, that brings back the cash, that enables you to invest for things that are going to be early, mid, later. So along that curve, you have to be doing things that are going to be good for our consumers and our partners down the road. One of them is that example. So we are experimenting with things like that. Is it a big part of the spend? No. Is it part? Yes. And there's so many of those type of things we're doing to make sure that we are in the right spot when those types of technologies come to the point where they become mainstream and we actually reach that critical mass where people start using it. You know, once upon a time, and it's not that long ago, we used to use paper tickets to get onto an airplane. You and I are old enough to remember. There are probably a lot of you who don't remember that, right? And it was some time before you could use your phone to just show your phone and get on the plane, right? And that's the type of things. But you had to work on that. You had to be dealing with the technology then. So when it became a point where people really started to use it, it would be done. Back in the trading days, there's an old saying. Someone says that, I had the right idea, but I was just too early. And the other way to say I'm too early is say I was wrong. So you have to be very careful, because being too early, being wrong is just as bad as being too late.
So then the market is reacting to what? This is a kind of temporary kind of blip. This is is there impact from kind of hotels and impact up the funnel? Are you feeling pressure from Google? What's happening? What's behind some of that?
Well, again, I try not to do too much and try and think, put myself in the minds of the investors and who's going to be fast money, meaning they're in and out, and who's a that's not my thing. I spent a long time on Wall Street. When I was a trader, we were looking those stock prices every minute, every trade, right? Now
And you don't do that anymore?
No, I don't. I don't do that because that's not my job. My job as the CEO and leader of this company is to help direct all of our efforts to produce long-term value. And that's not being concerned minute by minute, day by day. The value of the company in the long run comes from what you have created that is providing something that people are willing to pay for. That's where it's at. Very different perspectives.
So you had this incredible kind of threshold passed over the summer, $100 billion market cap. So where does the next $100 billion come from? And this is something that also was discussed on the earnings call. You've reached such a scale. How do you continue to generate the kind of expectations that, frankly, you've you've set for yourself?
So $100 billion is a lot of money, I agree. But
I would imagine so, but it's kind of hard for me to imagine.
Do you realize, when you think about, again, your research, not mine, your research, that makes us a single-digit percentage share of the travel business? So, yeah, we're big, but we're a small share. That's a lot of opportunity to still create more value.
But there are other pieces of that other, all those digits, right? There are other sectors that you're not involved in, like flights, managed corporate travel, cruise.
Well, okay, so a couple things on that. One, I think Steve Havner may be a little bit insulted if you say we're not in the flight area. I just say, you may not come back.
I'm okay with insulting Steve. I think I've gotten my fair share over the years. We're good.
Okay, just saying. You may have seen we've been experimenting. If you've been on Booking.com, you may have seen kayak showing up in different places on that. And we're going to continue to experiment with that.
Okay.
And while I'm not going to say what we plan to do, I try not to tell our long-term strategy all the way down. But I agree with you that part of the vision, part of what we want to do, the big way to say it, and I'll say it again, is we're using technology, we're leveraging technology so that we can make it easier for people to experience the world. And that means eventually more than just getting somebody the best price for a hotel, the easiest use of it. And I've talked about this in some other places around there. Because in the long run, and we all do it, look, we all travel. We all have had problems. We've all found from the beginning of the time we start thinking about taking a trip to the time we come home, there are all sorts of elements along that journey where you probably have thought to yourself, God, this sucks. This should be done better.
Yeah, but how do you? And we all know that. And some of the examples, like the hotel example, is fantastic. And there's lots of examples that we could bring up. But how do you turn that into generating revenue and the bottom line for the company? I mean, that's all great stuff. But how does that?
When you create a better service, more people come to you, and they use your service. And partners who want that demand, they pay us money for that. It's not that hard. It's actually kind of simple.
I have heard that from time to time. Okay. Private accommodation. What's happening in that sphere? That's an area you've been growing in quite a bit and investing quite a lot.
Yep. We talked about that. That's an important part of where we're going. And we've had that business for some time now. It's not like we suddenly woke up yesterday and said, oh, gee, that alternative accommodations thing, homes, apartments, we should get some. We've had those for a long time. But we have made a conscious decision to increase our investment in that area and grow that part of our business. And part of the reason is because people want it. And I've given this example. I've talked to people about this. I went away with my family this summer to Iceland. Great trip. Before we went, we're trying to decide where to go. I have 2 teenage kids, a daughter who's 17, a son who's 14, and we're thinking hotel, apartment. So I go to Booking.com and I look at it, and it's the way I want to see things because I'm seeing them both on the same page. I'm able to compare and contrast the prices, what's there, all things right there. That's good, but you know something? I didn't think we had enough properties. And we didn't have all the types of properties. So we're investing, so we will get more properties on there. So someone like me, I feel that I've got enough choices to be able to make that
And that's one of the really interesting things that I would agree has been a bit understated about what you've accomplished at Booking.com in particular, is its private accommodation is interspersed with hotels and other types of inventory.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's something that you guys have figured out that Expedia has been kind of struggling with and testing for some time. I don't know, will you share what you've learned maybe that they haven't figured out yet?
And why would I want to do that?
Douglas, we have a question from the floor.
Wait a sec, he was going to answer. He was. I was going to work on this.
Glenn,
Okay.
do you have an answer you'd like to give before we?
Well, I'll say this. I believe because we grew that organically, it's always easier to do something organically than if you purchase a company and then you have to try and integrations are always difficult. That's the first thing right off the bat. And if you come integration, it's a different model. It's a listing model. It's not a booking model to start with, and you have to make all those shifts. It's harder. I will say this, though. We have a long way to go. Yes, it's a good process, but we know we can improve it significantly. And by the way, one of the biggest problems we have is awareness in a place like the U.S. Because if I go to most people in the U.S. and I say, if you wanted to rent a home, where would you go? Not a lot of people are going to say Booking.com. That's something we're going to change.
We had a question from the floor?
Yes. Hi. So this is great. Actually, my question has to do with the private accommodation industry. We have a great relationship and partnership with Booking.com. So as you've seen, that Booking.com is natively a hotel platform, and now you're seeing the majority of inventory moving into the private accommodation section. My question is, from Pricelight's standpoint, what opportunity are you looking at as far as into investments in improving the infrastructure that will create a less friction in the online booking aspect of those accommodations? Because you're now merging very manual, fragmented inventory into much more automated hotel inventory, and everyone wants to book it the same way.
Yes. First, thank you for the partnership. We appreciate it. There are so many areas I can think of off the top of my head that we need to change. But I'll start right from the beginning is the sign up if you're a host. You know, some of our competitors, it's pretty easy. It's a very easy process. For us, that's an area we need to make improvement. We need to make it so somebody who has a property and they want to list it on Booking.com because it is the largest source of demand, and they're a person who wants to make some money out of renting out their property, certainly wants to be part of that platform. We got to make it easy so they can get on right away, fast. That's one. Payments, another one. Certain parts of the world, payments can be very, very difficult. Particularly, don't forget that Booking.com grew up on the agency model. You go into a hotel, and you check out, and you give them a credit card or cash or whatever at a hotel, and that's how the transaction ends, with the payment to the hotel. Now, if you're renting your own apartment, and you're not in the apartment because you're traveling that week, that's why you rented it out, because you want to make some money while you were somewhere else, you're not there to take the money. So how are you going to handle that payment thing? Particularly when you get out in the long tail. So those are areas that we need to build up facilities, platforms, all sorts of things to do to make things easier. And there are a lot of things that in that area. I won't go through all of them, but I'll just say that the good thing about it is we got a great business right now, so all these things that we're going to improve it are going to make it even better.
So now, but a key difference in the model between Booking and your competitors is the commission versus the traveler fee model.
Yeah.
And the cost to the supplier for your competitors is much more attractive. So
It's much for what?
much more attractive, right, to the supplier, right? The commission is a lot lower. So how are you?
I don't know if that's true, but go on.
Well, that's anywhere from 3 to 8%, depending upon the competitor, right? So do you have to change your model or adapt, or are you having to do things to compete for that supply?
We're going to what we do everywhere in all facets of our business, and that is we are always experimenting what's the best way to do something. So we try to avoid being dogmatic about anything. You know, there's that great saying about in God we trust, everybody else bring data. That's a good way to think about businesses.
Okay. You're welcome to cite some more Phocuswright research if you like.
The point is that if we think there are other models that are better, if we think there are other ways to do the business that will result in a greater return, we'll make those changes.
Okay.
And we will continue to experiment with what's the best way to do it. And what sometimes one thing may be better, sometimes another way may be better. But we're not going to be someone who says, oh, we did it that way all the time, so we're just going to keep doing it. That's a bad way to do things. And we talked about some things in the past about getting rid of things that no longer worked.
You have done that? There are some big things that you used to do that you've cut. Is that a difficult process? How do you manage through that?
Well, let's take the example. We grew up on that name your own price product in air. And that was the big thing that got us going 17 years ago, 18 years ago. That was, and people talked about it. Wow, this is a great thing. Name your own price, and you can get an airline ticket a lot cheaper. But over time, that product became less and less viable as the market changed, as airlines pulled back in availability. So the availability of extra seats that we could get for that product started disappearing. And prices, a lot more low-cost carriers came in. So you couldn't save as big a number in terms of total dollars. You may still get a good percentage, but it just wasn't worth the trouble. And so at some point, you just say, am I using my capital? Am I using my people? Am I using all the resources I have correctly? Or do I need to shift and have those people work on something new? Yes, it is painful emotionally because it's something that something that took you where you are now because you had that at the beginning, but it's also hard on people. People work on that product. Are you going to be able to find an alternative job for them and another thing or not? And all those things. But that's something you have to do. If you want to build a business, you have to be willing to make hard choices. And those hard choices are things like getting rid of your firstborn.
Gentlemen, we have a question sent in via Twitter. This is Glenn. What's your opinion on the Chinese travel market? What's your investment strategy for the C-Trip case and the recent Meituan investment?
That's an excellent question because, in my mind, the biggest area of growth in travel is associated with China. I read a thing in the New York Times last week, and it was citing a McKinsey study that said currently there are 100 million households in China that are at middle class income or above. And they expect within a dozen years, it'll be 300 million households that will have that level. And that level is a level that travels. So think about it, 200 million households who are coming on, who are not traveling today, who are going to come on over the next fall. So it is incredibly important that we have a strategy in China. So we have been there for some time organically. We are on the road to having 1,000 employees in China. We'll be there in a few months. We'll have our 1,000th employee. We have 3 call centers in China right now. Our 2 big businesses there are Agoda and Booking. We have at Booking, they have a relationship with C-Trip. We've been a good partner with C-Trip for
Well, you have a significant stake in C-Trip.
We have an over $2 billion value investment in them, which we are very pleased with.
And I think a lot of people may not know just how big Meituan has become, especially in the hotel space, and is being talked about as the next big competitive threat, or one of them.
Meituan is an interesting company because they do so many, its biggest business is actually food delivery and dining. And they do things, all sorts of different types of what's called, online to offline. And one element of that is travel. So Agoda had been working with them for some time. And we were offered an opportunity to invest in that. We put $450 million into it as part of a $4 billion investment that was led by Tencent, which is without doubt one of the premier online companies in the world. And the other investors were just a blue chip list of financial investors, or a stellar list. And when they asked us, would you like to participate in Agoda having that relationship, we said, sure.
So one last question I want to ask you about. Something that's been flying under the radar, I think, for some time is something called booking experiences. So dipping your toes into tours and activities and attractions. I've actually had a number of partnerships with different players in that space, I think, over the years, Get Your Guide and others. but now you're also doing this. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on there, and is this a test? Could this be a next big thing? And Steve Kaufer has talked about attractions and activities as the next billion-dollar vertical for TripAdvisor.
So I said how we want to eventually provide the travel experience the world, and that includes that subject too. How fast we'll get there, I don't know. We're always experimenting, we're always investing. I mentioned how you have to put some money for things that you're doing today, some money for doing later, and some stuff that's not going to happen for years. We are putting money as a test in many different markets. We'll see how it develops and how it goes. The one thing that I absolutely believe, though, is in the long run, the value we bring to the consumer is going to be, are you making their travel, and that's everything, easier? And that's where we want to be.
Well, easier travel, it's hard to argue with that. Ladies and gentlemen, Glenn Fogel.